next is carboxylic acid derivatives. So I kind of went over a little bit in the last lecture, but I'm going to go over it again. So carboxylic acids, these are carboxylic acid derivatives. They're formed by condensation reactions with carboxylic acids. So normally they're formed from they're formed starting from carboxylic acids. So what happens is the hydroxyl group of the carboxylic acid and the hydrogen from that nucleophile added are lost as a water, so H2O. And then what happens is that nucleophile replaces that hydroxyl group on the carboxylic acid, and it forms a new functional group. So as you can see on the bottom, they all include a carbonyl group. That's their defining feature. But then instead of the alcohol group that is attached to the carbonyl carbon, as in carboxylic acids, they have different groups attached to them. So the anhydride, it looks similar to a carboxylic acid because it's actually two carboxylic acids reacting with each other in order to form this anhydride. So it's like two carboxylic acids combined into one. Ester, so it's a carboxylic acid reacted with an alcohol group, so an OR group, in order to form that ester. So the OR group will replace the OH hydroxy group in a carboxylic acid. And then amide, so either ammonia or an amine group will replace that hydroxyl group in a carboxylic acid in order to form an amide. So I'm going to go further into detail about the carboxylic acid derivatives. So amides, they usually have the general structure, general formula RCONR2. As you can see on the bottom right, that's the general structure of a amide. So it has the carbonyl carbon double bonded to that carbonyl oxygen, and an OR group, an R group attached to the carbon, but then instead of an OH group attached to it, it has a nitrogen attached to it, and it can have two alkyl groups attached to it. So these R's, they can be alkyl groups, or they can be just hydrogens. So it can have one carbon chain attached to it, two carbon chains attached to it, or no carbon chains, depending on what the starting amine was. So like I said, it's a carboxylic acid or any of the other derivatives reacted with a ammonia group, NH3, or an amine group. It has to be a secondary or a primary amine group. So it can only have one or two carbon chains attached to it. If the amine group has three carbon chains to attach to it, then you can't use that to form a amide group. And because the amide might have hydrogens attached to that nitrogen, it might be able to hydrogen bond. So if the starting group was an ammonia or a primary amine, then it will either have one or two hydrogens attached to that nitrogen, so it can hydrogen bond. But if it's a secondary amine, then the nitrogen won't have any hydrogens attached to it, so it won't be able to hydrogen bond. And you can have a cyclic amine, and those are called lactams. So when a molecule has an amine group and also a carboxylic acid attached to the same molecule, then you can form a cyclic amine where there's an intermolecular bonding to form a cyclic amine, amine, I mean, and those are called lactams. So next, esters. Like I said, it's formed by reacting with carboxylic acid or one of the derivatives in order in a reaction with alcohol. And this is also a dehydration reaction because it loses a water molecule as a side product. And it's called a synthesis reaction because you combine two molecules into one. And the most common ester synthesis is called Fischer esterification. So this is when an ester is formed under acidic conditions from a carboxylic acid and an alcohol group. So as you can see on the bottom, when you react an carboxylic acid and an alcohol group under acidic conditions, you form an ester product, and also the molecule loses water as a side product. So that's ester. Esters, they lack hydrogen bonding because, as you can see, the ester group, it doesn't have any hydrogens attached to either oxygen. So because there's no hydrogens attached to either of the oxygen groups, there is no hydrogen bonding between esters. And you can also have cyclic esters as similar to amides, and cyclic esters are called lactones. The most common form of an ester in our body are called triacylglycerols. So this is the storage form of fats in our body. This is when esters of long-chain carboxylic fatty acids. This is esters formed from long-chain carboxylic fatty acids and glycerol. So glycerol is the alcohol group, and then the fatty acids are the carboxylic acids. And when the two react with each other, they form triacylglycerols, which is a form of an ester. And a reaction called saponification. This is when fats are hydrolyzed under basic conditions to produce soap. So esters can be hydrolyzed under basic conditions in order to produce soap. And you can add acid to the soap in order to regenerate the fatty acids. So that's esters. Next are anhydrides, also commonly referred to as acid anhydrides. They are formed through condensation reactions of carboxylic acids. So when you react the same carboxylic acid with each other, you form a symmetrical molecule where if you cut the molecule down the middle of the oxygen between the two carbonyls, you get identical molecules. But when you react two different carboxylic acids with each other, then the molecule won't be symmetrical. So you can see on the bottom, two carboxylic acids, if they have the same R group, then you will form a symmetrical anhydride. But when the two R groups are different, it won't be symmetrical. And it's also a dehydration synthesis because you lose water as a side product, and you combine two molecules into one. This problem. So which class of compounds has the general formula RCOOR? All right, most people pick choice C, and yeah, that's the correct answer. So as you can see, you can kind of draw out the structure of this. So you have an R group, and that's connected to the carbon, and there's two oxygens connected to this carbon, right? So you know one of them has to be a double bond in order to have those four bonds connected to the carbon, and then the R group has to be attached to the single bonded oxygen. So this is the general structure of a ester group.